Hello everyone, Helen here. How are you today? I do hope you're okay. And thank you very much for stopping by to spend a little bit of your time with me. And today is going to be one of those more philosophical ones that I do from time to time, where I'm sharing my thoughts on something. And I guess the general theme is creativity. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to share a little bit of drawing. Not very good drawing, I'm sorry. But I'm going to share it anyway because, in the way that I do, I like to try and encourage you and say you don't have to be really good at something to give it a go. And I'm going to do some bullet journaling today and take you on a little visit that I went on last week, which I really enjoyed. And also going to share with you a completely finished project that might be something to do with a little knitted pig. So that'll be later on. So sit back, relax. And if you ever want to just watch one particular topic that I'm talking about, it's worth your while looking in the description box below this video, because I nearly always put timestamps for the different sections of my podcast, and you can just go there and find the thing that you want to look at. And also, if you're interested in bullet journaling and you haven't seen my previous podcasts, you can go to a playlist that I've made, which I haven't done any whole podcasts on bullet journaling, but that I've made a playlist of episodes where there is a bit of bullet journaling amongst the other things that I'm talking about. So that just for your information. In fact, I haven't talked about bullet journaling for absolutely ages. Probably the main reason is that I haven't felt like I've had anything new to say about bullet journaling. I've just kind of, it's part of my life, and I've just gone on in the same old way. Well, it gradually evolves actually, but and I think probably the other reason is that maybe I haven't used it quite as much this year as in previous years. This is this year's bullet journal. It's maybe not quite as full by this point of the year as it normally is, but I am still using it. I do handle it most days. Apart from anything else, I still keep a record of all of the walks that I go on, and I just make a note of the weather and anything particular that might have caught my attention on that day. I've used it a small number of occasions this year to get my thoughts in order. For example, when I was having a minor crisis at the beginning of this year about not getting things done, and another time when I was feeling that the world was going out of control, and then realised there were things that I could control. I've continued to record camper van trips in my bullet journal, even though we do have a lovely camper van logbook to record details of our trips away. You can see here that it's filling up very nicely, but I don't add any photos or pictures to this journal. And very often I pick up leaflets that when I'm away that I want to use, and sometimes I want to print out photos, and so I do that in my bullet journal, and then I'm using it a bit more like a scrapbook. I have got an unfinished double-page spread that I hope to finish at some point about the coronation. I need to print out one or two photos and things. It's all fine. It's very easy to be daunted by seeing other people's very professional-looking bullet journals, and it's easy to forget that the whole point of the bullet journal is to use it in a way that completely suits you personally. And so that's really what I'm continuing to do. Anyway, I was chatting a couple of weeks ago about chasing butterflies, literally because I was trying to take photos and videos of them, but also metaphorically, I suppose, when I realised that it was a good way of describing how I was feeling at the time. I was feeling as if my head was full of all sorts of creative ideas, but that I couldn't actually catch hold of any of them. They all seemed a little bit out of my reach, too deeply in my subconscious. And in the days after that, I kept coming back to this idea that I was just spending time chasing butterflies and filling my time with the same old things instead of being a bit more creative. of course, yes, I am being creative all the time, but I just felt like it wasn't in the way that I wanted to be. There's more than one definition for what we might mean by being creative. We might just mean that we're simply creating something that wasn't there before we started. Or we might mean that we want to create something completely new and not following anyone else's pattern or design or format. I think the thing that really sparked off these thoughts was when my auntie came to stay recently and I got out my tin of 100 leaves to show her that I created as part of last year's 100-day project, where I made 100 different leaves that used not only all sorts of art media and skills, knitting, crochet, but it also led me to make some tiny books and write some little stories and poems and even compose a leafy lullaby. I enjoyed doing that project so much. But I chose not to do the 100-day project this year, mainly because I was trying to give myself an easier time since my days were already very full. And I've been trying not to join in with every single make-along that comes along as well, on Instagram. And I haven't even done Christmas in July this year in an attempt not to overcrowd myself with things to do. But I think I have rather missed doing these things, especially the 100-day project, which gave me free rein to use my creative brain in the most imaginative ways. I do have one or two creative projects on the go that aren't yarn related, and which I haven't shared with you yet, but they've kind of somewhat stagnated for a while, and for these I definitely need some extra space in my head. It's not a simple case of finding the time to do them. I need some kind of kick of inspiration or motivation. And that's one of the great things about committing to doing something like the 100-day project, especially for someone like me who doesn't give up on things easily once I've made a commitment. Going out for a walk and chasing butterflies and then sitting out in the fresh air and nature was the first step in thinking a bit more about how I was feeling, and it definitely helped to start clearing my head. You could say that I tend to overanalyze things, and you could be right. But sometimes it's the only way that I can clear my head and move forward. But the next thing I did, you might not be surprised to learn if you've been popping in here for a while, was to turn to my bullet journal. I find my bullet journal so helpful at times like these. The whole nature of a bullet journal is that thoughts can be written down in bite-sized chunks. They don't have to be any fully formed thoughts if you're not at that stage of thinking. Of course, another of the reasons why I love my bullet journal is that I can simply spend a little time playing. And I decided that I wanted to draw lots of butterflies on the pages where I would be writing. So the first thing I did before doing anything in my bullet journal was to get out one of my drawing books. It's called 20 Ways to Draw a Tree and 44 other nifty things from nature. And I've made lots of attempts at drawing in this book in the past, and it's a really great place for just practicing putting pencil to paper, because you can simply copy the pictures that are there if you don't feel confident to draw onto a blank sheet of paper. Copying is a great way of increasing your confidence in drawing. Copying is only ever bad if you try and claim that someone else's work is actually your own. I really love this book, and it's definitely given me confidence, even if I'm not very often happy with my efforts. Anyway, I knew there was a page in the book on butterflies that I hadn't done, so I set to trying to copy some of the butterflies. wasn't at all happy with how things were going. So instead of pursuing the drawings of butterflies, I decided to look through my collection of stickers. And although I didn't find many butterflies, I did find a series of fairies with butterfly wings, and I got busy with arranging them onto the pages of my bullet journal. And before long, I was feeling very happy with how the pages looked. So as I began to think about those creative butterflies flitting about in the air, I jotted down some of the thoughts that came to me. And it was so satisfying to put those intangible thoughts into words that were coming from my subconscious. I was quite surprised at what was coming out of my head. As usual, I wrote them in pencil first in case I wanted to change the wording. And I did actually do that in one or two places before I started writing in pen, clarifying some of the things I'd written to explain myself more clearly. And as I wrote, the butterflies gradually were turning into little feathery seeds drifting down through the air towards the ground. So I wrote, lots of little seeds of creative ideas, floating about at the edge of my consciousness, not allowing me to capture them, always escaping just before I can take hold of them, making me feel as though there are creative things that I could be doing, but I don't really know what they are. And it feels a bit frustrating, as though I'm wasting time on other things instead of creating new things unique to me. And thinking that the creative ideas are perhaps being crowded out by all the other things that I'm trying to do. And perhaps what I need is space in my mind so that the creative seeds can settle and become visible. I then did a little bit of research on what other people do when they're feeling like this, because I assume that other people feel like this sometimes. Let me know if you ever feel like this. I wasn't exactly feeling creatively uninspired, but I felt that I needed a way of unlocking things that were hidden in my head. So I thought I'd put together a little list of some of the ideas I found. They're all things you can try if you ever feel the same as me, or perhaps if you've simply lost your motivation for doing a particular creative thing that you normally enjoy doing. I often hear people say that they've lost their knitting or crochet mojo, for example. So firstly, the first action I often take is just to go outside and walk with no particular aim other than to enjoy being out in nature. It isn't usually a complete cure, but it can result in a clearer headspace, at least for a little while. Writing things down is a great thing to do. It doesn't matter what form this takes, just words or short sentences or pictures or a great long splurge of an essay. It doesn't really matter. It's just getting things down on paper is often really helpful. You can try doing some tidying or rearranging in your home or your workspace. This often gives me the impetus to get on with something I've been wanting to do for a while, or it simply makes me feel calmer, having less clutter around me. You can try connecting with other creative people, something we're often doing when we're spending time on YouTube or Instagram. Or sometimes it's good to go out and meet with other creative people face to face. It only takes one tiny comment that someone makes to ignite a spark of an idea that hadn't quite surfaced from within your brain. You could perhaps learn about someone who inspires you, such as an artist or designer. I remember when I first learnt about the artist Grandma Moses by watching the Peanuts podcast. The Grandma Moses was such an inspiring lady, and she only started painting when she was in her 70s. And that made me feel really inspired to go outside my comfort zone and try things I hadn't really thought about trying before. You can just try doing something new. Perhaps choose an art or craft book from your bookshelf and find a project that you've never done before. Or you can simply learn something new, a language or some history, the names of different grasses, absolutely anything really. If you can, you could allow yourself a day to just be. You can give yourself the gift of time with no expectations as to the outcome. Just give yourself permission to do absolutely no rushing around and to take the day at a slower pace as you wish. You could maybe go to an art gallery or exhibition and just enjoy losing yourself in the artwork on display, as well as learning some new things. You never know what might suddenly spark an idea for something creative, maybe absolutely nothing to do with the actual paintings that you're looking at. And finally, if you have some little special objects on a shelf somewhere, you could try picking one of them up and just holding it, and then just letting your thoughts flow without your direction at all, and you might be really surprised at the unexpected thoughts that enter your consciousness. One thing that I did very recently, just last week in fact, which really sparked my imagination, was a visit to Newcastle to go to an art exhibition that I'd noticed was taking place in one of the art galleries in Newcastle. The title of the exhibition was Nature in Essence, so you might not be surprised that it caught my attention. So off I went on the train to Newcastle, a short journey of less than 15 minutes. It's a much bigger city than Durham, where I live now, and it's the city that I'm most familiar with and which I'm very fond of. One of its most famous landmarks is Gray's Monument, and it was looking particularly good on the day that I was there, with the sun on it and a backdrop of blue sky. It was built in 1837, mainly to commemorate Charles Grey, who was the second Earl Grey, a British Prime Minister from 1830 to 1834. Various theories suggest that Earl Grey is linked with the tea of that name, although there's no conclusive evidence for any of the stories. Not far from Gray's Monument is the Laying Art Gallery, which was founded in 1901 by a local Newcastle businessman, Alexander Lane. He wasn't actually an art collector, he just funded the establishment of the art gallery, and he said that he was certain that the liberality of the inhabitants of Newcastle would soon fill it with works of art. It's a very grand building with high ceilings and some beautiful stained glass windows. It's got a lovely shop and a cafe, and there's often art workshops held there for all ages and abilities. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to take photos of individual paintings in the exhibition, but I thoroughly enjoyed slowly making my way round, reading the very interesting information that was on display. The exhibition was based around pre-Raphaelite artists from the 1850s to about the 1930s, and it was a time when there was great changes in the way that artists looked at nature. Many artists began to do their paintings in the open air, and they'd try and capture every tiny detail of nature with realistic colours as well. One painting that I loved was called Spray of Dead Oak Leaves by John Ruskin, and he was an artist who had quite an influence on other artists of the time. He said, "If you can paint one leaf, you can paint the world." And he also wrote, "There are no natural objects of which more can be learned than out of stones." So I like his thinking. The exhibition gave me lots of food for thought, and it's definitely set off a few creative ideas, which I might chat about another time. And if you get the chance to visit Newcastle, I know some of you are thousands of miles away, but if you do get the chance to visit Newcastle, the exhibition is going to be there until about the middle of October. It's really well worth a visit. So yeah, I really enjoyed my time there. So final thing today, I'm going to share with you the little pig that I've knitted, because the little pig has finally got her own clothes to wear. When I showed you her last time, she was borrowing somebody's poncho. But now she is finished. Where is she? Down here. Ta-da! So here she is. So this is Rose, and she's wearing a very smart jumper and skirt. The jumper is just a plain jumper, although the yarn that I've used has got lots of mottled colours in it. You'll see when I show you some photos in a moment. And the skirt was a bit more involved than the jumper. It was, hopefully it's not giving too much away if I say that when you knit it, you just put the horizontal stripes in, and then afterwards the pattern says that you have to get a crochet hook and do a sort of surface crochet using the same colour as the horizontal stripes down in the places that you've knitted for those stripes. But when I was chatting about this with my mum before I started doing that, before I'd finished the skirt, she said that she would actually embroider those stripes. She'd just do chain stitch, and so I decided that I would try that, and I'm really pleased with how it looks. So I think, so if there's any of you watching this are going to make this skirt, or also in the book, I haven't even said anything about it, I'm assuming you know, the pattern comes from Moosh and Friends by Cynthia Vallée, and yes, if any of you are going to make this little skirt, or the dress also, if you make the sheep has a dress which has got the same pattern on the skirt, I think, and yes it has, that's where I had to follow that pattern to make the skirt, then I can highly recommend you try embroidering. I mean, I didn't try crocheting, so the crocheting option might be just as good, but this worked really well and wasn't at all difficult. And then when I dressed her, I decided it still looked a little bit plain, not glamorous enough, so I made her this little pearl necklace out of some little beads, and I think that finishes her off nicely. So yeah, and when I first posted a picture of Rose on Instagram when she was only a head, one of my lovely viewers, Leslie, so maybe you're watching, Leslie, said that she was looking forward to the both pigs going out and about, and that she hoped there might be some piggy themed piano music to accompany the photos. So of course straight away I thought, oh well, yeah, I like that idea. So I went off to research pig themed music, and given that I have to think about copyright, I can't use a Pinky and Perky music. But I did find that the composer Edvard Grieg had written a little piano piece, a very short piano piece, just perfect for my needs, and it's called Griesenwaltz, or Pig's Waltz. And even more remarkable, I found that I had a copy of it. It was just a book that I picked up in a second-hand bookshop ages ago, and I'd never actually played anything from it. And I found that it had this Pig's Waltz in it, so I practiced it and recorded it, and that's the music you're going to hear while I show you photos of Rose and Matthew in the woods. So hope you'll enjoy that. Right, it is time for me to say goodbye to you once again. Goodness, I have chatted on quite a bit today. Well, I hope some of it's been interesting. If you've got any opinions and thoughts of your own, please, write me a comment below this video, and I will love to read that, and I always respond to the comments that are made. So yeah, thank you to everybody who does do that. But yes, it's time for me to go, so just take good care of yourself, keep nice and busy, and I'll be back again very soon. Okay then, bye.